Hello and welcome to the WeCrochet Facebook page and YouTube channel. My name is Katelyn. I am the editor and marketing manager here at crochet.com, WeCrochet. In case you don't know who I am, I thought I fixed this light and I still have these dots in my eyes. Whatever, we're just gonna go with, oh gosh, that's bad. I don't know. We'll see if I can figure this out and where I can put my head so that it's not there. I'll work on it. Hi, everybody. Hi, Julia. Great to see you this morning. I am going to caveat this right away. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to try my best to make it through. But if I need a sip of water, I'm going to just grab one so we don't lose it all here. So it is great to have you all here today. Hi, Heather. I see you here as well. We've got a bunch of people coming in, so you can go ahead. You could say hi, hello, where you're from, what's going on. My mom is here. And hi, Deborah. Great to see you as well. We have a lot to cover today. So there's no guest today. It's just me. You get me for today. We're going to have a lot of fun here. Let me just, how do I get this so crooked? I want to make sure we're facing this way. So we have a lot to cover today. Lots going on right now. Lots to announce that are happening that we just want to make sure that you guys all know about. So let's get into a little bit of what's going on and things you need to know first, and then we'll jump into the meat of what we're talking about today. First things first, today launches our Brava sale. It is 25% off all Brava yarn. So that means Brava worsted, Brava sport, Brava speckle, Brava tweed, Brava stripe, Brava 500, Brava bulky, and I think we got them all. Every Brava is on sale right now for the next week. It's 25% off, no coupon code. Just go ahead and shop, put it in your cart, and that price is already marked down. So make sure you go ahead and grab any Brava you need. And tying into that, we just had a launch of our new collection called Aviary. And that collection was all tweed patterns, different garment patterns. And 2 of them are actually using Brava tweed. So now would be a great time to stock up on your Brava tweed to go ahead and make those garments. Oh, where to go? Heather said she just got her Brava Sport. Yay! We love it, love it, love it. Hi, Mandy. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Pamela. It's great to see you all here. But yeah, that Aviary collection, we just stuck the link in there. You can go ahead and use your Brava tweed on those patterns. Also, speaking about yarn, Heather Lee is our monthly yarn of the month, whatever, I guess I just double said that, but 20% off Heather Lee yarns for the entire month of April. Go ahead and grab it. What we're going to talk about later in a couple of minutes is also going to be tied into Heather Lee. Great time to go ahead and purchase it. 20% off all in stock Heather Lee yarn in our sport weight or our worsted weight. So just to give you an insider tip, you can go and get your Brava for 25% off. You can get your Heather Lee 25% off. Combine it in one order so you can get your free shipping as well. And you'll be able to take advantage of both of them because they're sales, they're not promotion codes. So you can go ahead and grab both of those. Mandy said, made my first Brava beanie yesterday, and now I'm obsessed with that pattern. Yay! So excited to have you trying that out. Another sale going on that I wanted to let you know about. Tony Lipsy is our featured designer of the month, and all of her patterns that we have on our site are 30% off for the month. So now's the time to grab them because this is the low price that you're going to get them at. You can stock up on all of the patterns that she has on our website, 30% off, no code, just add it to your cart. The prices are already marked down. So again, you can take advantage of all 3 of those sales going on in one order. Now, the patterns do not count as part of your free shipping because they are a digital download, but you could still go ahead and purchase them all at the same time and be able to do that. Yes. Okay. One thing that I want to tell you about that's super exciting that hasn't been officially released yet, but we're going to talk about it here today. Just real quickly, we're going to have more details coming up, but we are sponsoring Our Maker Life, which is a yarny event for makers, crocheters, and knitters in July in Colorado. We are going to be there. We are sponsoring part of the event, and we're going to be there. I'm going to be there. My counterpart on the knit side is going to be there. So we'll be there to chat with you and talk and meet up and get to meet you face to face. So if you can, if you're available, if it works in your budget, we would love to see you out at Our Maker Life. There are still tickets available. It is a July event this summer, so hopefully we'll get to see some of you there. If you're going to be going, let us know, and we will be sure to check for you when we're there and try to meet up at some of those events that are going on. Like I said, we're going to give you a lot more information about that event as we get a little bit closer. We're going to have the people who run the event on here to tell you all the details, but I just wanted to throw it out there that if you've kind of been on the fence about Our Maker Life, we're going to be there, and we hope that we can see you guys there too. Okay, I also wanted to let you know that we launched a couple new kits this past week, and you might want to take advantage of it. The Hooked on Socks book, which launched in March, you guys have been loving. We now have kits. There are 4 kits of socks. I believe both of these are kits. Remind me, hopefully I'm showing the right ones. But anyway, these are Hooked on Socks. There are 4 kits of sock kits now that you can get. You'll get the yarn that you need to make the pattern. You'll get the hook, and you will get the print book of Hooked on Socks. So we'll put that link in there as well, that you can go ahead and grab any one of those 4. If one of the 4 are not the one that you want to pick, that's okay. You can still get the book in ebook version. You can get it in print book version, or you can get the individual pattern, however you want to do it to make these great socks. Last but not least, speaking of kits, this one here is our Cold Snap Shawl. You've seen me wear it before. I love this pattern so much. It's my go-to when it's cold in my office, although today it's warm, and so I'm loving that. This is now available in a kit. We have 4 kits available for the winter morning collection. This is one of them. No, we have 3 kits. This is one of them. We did the sugar plum set, and we also did the scarf that is on the cover of the book. So we have those kits available too, that you can go and grab those. Let me grab a sip of water. Okay. The big announcement for today is we're doing a crochet along. This is going to be our first crochet along of 2023. It's kind of really our first crochet along ever. We've had bits and pieces. We've teamed up with some other people along the way, but this is everybody, well, almost everybody in the office on the yarn team is joining together to do this crochet along together. And we've officially announced it, and we are so excited to share it with you. We're going to talk about the details today, specifically focusing on gauge and how to get gauge and read your gauge and all those other things. And the pattern that we are doing is called the Heather Rainbow Adult Pullover. I have it here. We're going to put a link in that's going to take you to the event page, if you want to call it that. And it's going to have a download for the pattern. It's going to have a download for the yarn. Excuse me. It's going to have a download to get your dots hooks if you didn't get them yet. And it's going to have the calendar of when everything's going to be launching along the way and kind of what we're hitting. If you couldn't tell from the name of the pattern, this is using Heatherly yarn. Yes, we did this so that you could get your yarn 20% off right now to go ahead and make your pattern. So in the pattern, you will see, which you can download now. It's a free pattern for you to download. You just have to grab your yarn and your hooks. It is a striped pullover pattern. And so we're going to dive in today here, talking about gauge, talking about swatches, and everything else. Okay, if you give me a second here, I'm going to bring in my other camera. Okay, so let me just bring in my swatches here. Bear with me 1 second. So we are using Heatherly yarn for this project, and this pattern calls for a 3.5 hook. And so some people are able to get gauge with a 3.5 hook. Some people are not, and that is okay. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is what is gauge, how to get gauge, how to measure gauge, and all of the other details of gauge. So this is my gauge swatch. And I started out by using the yarn that I wanted to use, which is Heatherly Sport, because that's what the pattern calls for. Not that you have to use Heatherly Sport, it's just what I chose to use. And I used the 3.5 hook that the pattern calls for. I always suggest that you start with the exact information that the pattern calls for. So you can see here, right here at hooks, it tells you that you need an E 3.5 millimeter crochet hook or size to obtain gauge in half double crochet. So that's what I did my gauge in, half double crochet. It tells us in the pattern that our gauge is 18 stitches and 13 rows. So my gauge swatch needs to be larger than 18 stitches and 13 rows. I typically try to do like 5-6 inches for my gauge swatch because, as you can see, the edges do get a little bit wrinkly and a little bit different. And so I want to make sure I'm getting an accurate gauge measurement. And we're going to talk about measuring our gauge. I lost my note. Okay, so what is gauge? Gauge is a measurement of stitches and rows that you're trying to match that the designer got for the fabric that they made the project in. Why does gauge matter? We're going to show you the math on why gauge matters in just a second. But gauge matters so that your finished pattern will be the size that you expect it to be at the end. Because if your gauge doesn't match what the designer got, your finished project is not going to match it as well. We're going to talk about measuring gauge right now. And so when we measure gauge, we need to use some sort of device. And I always suggest using a hard ruler and not a tape measure. So tape measures are great for when you're measuring like around your bust or a body part that you have to get a circumference of. But when it comes to gauge, it's really great to use a hard ruler or hard surface type of piece, because this is not going to get distorted in the inches measurement, where a tape measure over time and overusing it is going to start to get distorted just a little bit. Because you're stretching it out and using it. So these are really great options. So you can go with a straight ruler. This one's a little bit harder to see because it's clear, but you can go with a ruler that just has your 4 inches. You could go with one of these, which is called a gauge, just like, your gauge. And so here it'll tell you 4 inches by 4 inches, and you can just measure down and across at the same time. Or you could use one of these tools that we have on the knit pick side. And it actually has like a little bit of a magnifying glass here. And it marks off in these red where your 4 inches is. So it's really easy to figure this out. Okay, so gauge is telling us we need 18 stitches. So we're counting stitches across. Let me straighten that out. We're counting stitches across this way. Hold on, let me see. It baffles me when I hear someone says Mandy said it baffles me when I hear someone doesn't make a gauge swatch, especially when it comes to a garment. Yes, and we're going to talk about why that is so important here. But when we're measuring our gauge swatch, you're going to make your swatch. You're going to make it bigger than the 4 inches that are needed, and you're going to wash/block this the way you're going to care for your garment. So because this is Heatherly and it has the acrylic in it, I would just put this in the wash machine and wash it, because that's the way I would take care of my garment afterwards. Or you could soak it in your water, or you could steam block it, whichever way you're going to handle taking care of it afterwards. Then you're going to lay down your ruler, and I'm going to try to use this one so it maybe magnifies it. And I'm going to put my left side, or my 0 inch, right here at the edge of one of my stitches. And then I'm able to count my stitches across until I hit this next red line. So if you're using something like this, I'm going to line up my stitch right here in the corner. I'm going to get it straight across, and now I can go and count my stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and just about 18. So if you'll see, you are counting your stitches across, and then you'll flip it this way and line it up here at the bottom of a row, and you're going to count up how many rows you did. And that's going to tell you what your gauge is. If for some reason you are not getting the proper gauge, what you're going to do is switch hook sizes. I had to do a second gauge swatch with a 4mm hook, and that one got me a lot closer to gauge. So here's my little note. I used a 4mm hook. I got 18 stitches and 14 rows. That's not perfectly what the gauge is, because if I grab my pattern here, I'm supposed to be 18 stitches and 13 rows. So I'm close enough, and that's what I'm going to start to use. And if you get into the problem like I did, where my gauge wasn't exactly right, hold on, let me get rid of this stuff, isn't exactly right, the first thing you want to do is change your hook size. So I went from a 3.5 to a 4, and that got me my stitch gauge, which is what is most important for this particular pattern because of the construction of it. So once you do that and you get your gauge close, at least on stitches, we can play around with the row gauge, which is what we're going to talk about and how to kind of figure it out. If going up one hook size doesn't work, try 2, or going down if you have too many stitches or too few stitches. If that doesn't work, you can also consider going from a metal tip to a wood tip. Trying a different material of hook can also make a difference because a metal tip tends to glide more, while a wood tip may give you some more grip on your yarn. If you're not using the yarn called for in the pattern, try using a different yarn. Sometimes when we substitute yarns, the makeup of the fiber is different. It might make it slipperier. It might be not quite the exact same weight as the yarn in the pattern. All of these things can affect your gauge and something that you might want to change about your gauge. Okay, so let's talk about why this is so important and what it kind of makes a difference about. So what I did here, let me straighten this out. Okay, so we're doing some math, and yes, it is simple math here that you just need to know and figure out for your pattern. Excuse me. And so in the pattern, it tells us that the gauge is 18 stitches and 13 rows equals 4 inches with half double crochet. Okay, so that's what I did my swatch with, half double crochet. I tried with the 3.5mm and I didn't get it, right? And I told you my gauge with a 3.5mm was 20 stitches and 15 rows. And so we're going to talk about what would happen if I don't adjust my gauge. If you have any questions along the way, go ahead and put them in the chat. We will go ahead and answer them. Sorry, my throat is getting dry over here. Okay. So we're going to pretend that we are making the size 1. And at the end of row 1, we see that there are 86 stitches. This pattern does not have any shaping to it, so you don't have to worry about increases and decreases in the body. So we're just going to go with what this stitch count is for row 1. If we take the gauge of 18 stitches in 4 inches, excuse me, we see that there are 4.5 stitches per inch. Okay, so we're going to use that bit of information to be able to calculate what the circumference of this pattern is. So to figure out how many inches across that's going to be, we're taking the 86 stitches that we know are in the row 1. We're dividing it by the 4.5 stitches. Oops, that's supposed to be an inch, not a number 1. But we're taking the 4.5 stitches per inch equals 19 stitches across the back. Okay, and because there's a front and a back to this pattern, that is half of our circumference. So then we take our 19 stitches for the front and our 19 inches, sorry, not stitches, inches that we got here, inches for the back plus our 19 for the front, and we get a 38-inch circumference, which is what the pattern tells us we're supposed to get. But my gauge was 20 stitches. and 15 rows instead of the 18 stitches and 13 rows. So what is that going to do to my pattern? Let's find out. Because really, when you look at it, it's only 2 stitches difference, but let's see what happens throughout the whole length or the whole circumference of the pattern. So again, size 1, 86 stitches, exactly the same. But, oh no, I screwed up the paper here. But I have 20 stitches per 4 inches instead of 18, which gives me 5 stitches per inch instead of 4.5. So for every inch, I'm getting half a stitch more than what I'm supposed to be getting. So when I take the total 86 stitches for the back and I divide it by my 5 stitches in 1 inch, I'm getting a total of 17 inches across the back instead of 19. So my sweater is going to come out to only 34 inches in my circumference, as opposed to the 38 that it should be. So do we see how that's impacting it? So by having my stitches per inch increase by just half a stitch, right? I am losing 4 inches in my circumference of my pattern. So my finished sweater will be 4 inches smaller than what it tells me it's going to be in the pattern. So we can adjust things and we can look at what the ease is supposed to be, what the final measurements are supposed to be, and we can make adjustments based off of our gauge, or we can try to adjust our gauge so that we are hitting this number of stitches so we're getting the exact circumference, which is the easiest thing to do, is to get this number of stitches so we can hit our circumference. One of the things that I was talking about with Jen this morning is that sometimes, excuse me, even if you hit this 18 stitches, you might not like what that fabric feels like or looks like. In those cases, you do have to make the adjustment to find a fabric you like and do a little bit of math to figure out what your final piece is going to be and see if that is a good fit for you. We can also do, let me grab my other paper here. We can also do the same thing for length. Okay, so now instead of using our 18 stitches, we're going to use our 13 rows. And this is going to tell us how long our garment is going to be. And so this is saying 4 inches for 13 rows, and size 1 ends with 62 rows for the full back panel. So if we take our 13 rows and we divide it into 4 inches, we get 3.25 rows per inch. So if we take our 62 rows and divide it out by the rows per inch, we get 19.1 inches long. We do know that there's 2 inches of ribbing that get added to the bottom of our sweater, so it gives us a total of 21 inches. But in my gauge, I only got 15 rows instead of the 13 that I was supposed to get. So that means for a size 1, still at 62 rows, I'm getting 3.75 rows per inch. So a half a row different. Again, half a row per inch, and we had a half a stitch per inch. So it's just a coincidence. So if I take my 56 rows and I divide it by my 3.75 instead of 3.25, I'm now getting 16.5 inches long instead of 19. And then if I add my 2 inches to that, I would have 18.5 inches long instead of my 21 inches. So that would tell me that if I have if I have 15 rows, but my stitch gauge was right, which is what actually happened with my gauge, I'm going to have to add some length to my pattern to get it to this 21 that it should be based off of the directions. Okay, give me 1 second here to switch back all of the cameras. Hold on. Okay. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. We're trying to break it down in an easy way so that you guys can figure out this math on your own. So there's a question here. I'm new at this. What is sport weight? Sport weight is how thick, or the weight of a yarn is how thick or thin it is. So we have a 4 weight, which is worsted, which is a thicker weight. Then we have DK. Then we have sport. Then we have fingering. We also go a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner. And when you look, let me grab this. When you look at a ball band, this one actually says sport weight on it. Or you're looking for one that has a number 2, because sport weight is a number 2 weight yarn. And so that's going to make a difference too in what you're picking, because if you're using a thicker yarn, you're obviously going to get a different gauge than what was used if you're using this thinner sport weight yarn. This is the Heatherly Sport that is being used in the pattern. So this one here is a thicker weight yarn. I would try to use this, which is a worsted weight, to make this sweater. I'm going to get a much larger sweater than I would had I been using the correct weight of yarn. Okay. So that's how you figure out your gauge and everything else. And the reason you're going to want to know what your gauge is and to use the math to figure out the rows or the stitches per inch to multiply by the rows or the stitches that the pattern calls for is it's going to tell you that exact circumference. So for instance, when I did my gauge, it was 20 stitches, which made my circumference 34 inches instead of the 38 inches. This pattern calls for 0 to 6 inches of positive ease. So you get to make your choice on how big or little you want, or how much ease you want in your pattern, which just means how tight it's going to be across your bust or the widest part of your body. So if I did this for the smallest size and the pattern tells me it's going to be 38 inches, but based off of my math, it's going to be 34, and I'm a 30-inch bust, that would only be 4 inches of positive ease. So I just have to know, am I okay with 4 inches of positive ease? And then I don't have to make a change to my gauge, because that gets me where I want to be. So hopefully I'm making this clear. It is a little bit of a tricky topic. If you have questions, please ask us. I know we're just announcing this, and so you probably don't have your pattern and your yarn yet and all that other stuff. We are going to be doing another Facebook Live on April 19th, and you can bring all of your questions there for getting started. We are going to be launching it. We're going to have everybody in the office talking about what they did with their projects. So bring your questions about gauge that you might have. If you go ahead and get started, bring any questions that you have then. Let us know what colors you're working on. And one last thing too that I want to make sure I show you. In the pattern, on the last page, there's a coloring page. And so you can use that to color in what colors you're thinking of using. So I'm going to use a red, an orange, a light blue, a green, a darker blue, and then I'm going to have white as my main color. So this gives me an idea of what my sweater is going to look like. You can play around with the colors that you want to use, that we have, whether it's Heatherly, whether it's whatever you're going to use, and you can try to get that kind of look at what your finished sweater is going to be. So I hope you're going to join us for this crochet along. Like I said, go download your pattern now, grab your yarn, start your gauge swatch, and then bring any questions to the 19th when we're going to be going live again with everybody that's participating in the office, or most people that are participating in the office, that will be there to answer your questions about gauge or other things along the pattern. We'll give you some tips and tricks for along the way as well. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for chatting with us about gauge. I hope you guys learned a lot and how to figure out that math. Be sure to check out everything we talked about in the beginning with our new collections and new launches. And we'll see you next week for another live. Have a great day, everyone.